All right, so here's the next pile of what now would be the freebies. We get a shell mill here, cutter, okay, and it looks like, even though it's been banging around its entire life. Oh, I was about to say it looks like it's in great shape, but there's a chip taken out right there. I bet you that'll still cut though. Might not be happy, but I do have an R8 adapter that'll fit this, pretty sure. So I've got several of these. This one is still covered in the wax or the cosmoline or whatever they call this stuff, which would indicate it's either brand new, never used, or came back from the sharpener and was not used since then. Okay, so I have no reason to believe that. You know what? Actually, that looks like that might have carbide tips on it. So that's a nice little score there in the trash pile. And then I got these cutters, okay, which would be just grand if I had a horizontal mill. But I hated to see these go to the scrap yard. They look like they're actually, other than rusty, some of them got some rust on them. They actually look like they're in decent shape. There's a small one there. These are marked. Some of these aren't so rusty. I can actually see what they say. This says 3 by 5/16 by something. This is a national twist drill company, Detroit. Well, this is interesting. It says a high-speed V parabolic. A high-speed V parabolic? Really? Then there's a narrow one there. Narrow one, narrow one. I mean, I don't know how narrow these have to get before they're considered slitting saws. But I'd say that a lot of these are, well, that one's not so thin. There's a thin one. Rochester, Michigan. National. We got a pile of these. I don't know what the heck I'm gonna end up doing with these. And I snagged this Niagara cutter. High-speed carbide standard specialist. The Niagara cutter. Okay, the sticker just fell off of it, the label, so I'm gonna make sure I keep that with this cutter. But look at this. Brand. Oh, no, that's been used, I guess. Or has it? It's weird. It's got like these grind marks on it here. Well, if it's been used, it's in excellent shape. So what this is a single angle cutter, an F45-44R, 4 by 1 by 1 1/4. So I guess it's 4-inch diameter by 1 inch deep, and then the 1 1/4 must be the arbor. And then it says 45-degree right hand. Okay, so that, if you had a need for one of these cutters and had to buy it new, I shudder to think what that sucker would cost. And we certainly didn't want that going to the scrapyard for a few pennies. On to the next little group of treasures here. This would fall under the heading of, this is something that I'm well aware of how great this stuff is. And I didn't even know you could buy it in gallons like this. I always bought it in the aerosol cans. And this is, I verified, I could tell from the smell. I've smelt this stuff enough times. That this is in fact what is in here. This is a PB Blaster. I have no idea what this cost to buy a gallon of this stuff today, but I got this basically as a freebie, and it's about half full. He was pleased for me to just take that away because he thought he was going to have to dispose of it. I don't think he really cared about it. There were several metal gallons, 3 or 4 of them sitting up there on a shelf that was Starrett. But they were a Starrett they weren't cutting lubricant. It was a Starrett, like rust preventative type of material. And I couldn't for the life of me figure out exactly what the concoction was that was in there. And because I just wasn't sure what it was, I left it. But I probably could have had those for free too. I tell you what, the old Starrett containers they were in were kind of cool, but I don't think those are collectible like the way people collect old oil cans, automotive oil cans. So I left those, but I grabbed the PB Blaster. Uh, he said he only uses WD-40, I guess, which is a different product altogether. So this is a nice score for free. Here's a homemade, shop-made boring bar. Okay, and actually looks like it's got a threading. Looks like it's got a cutter in it that's ground for threading in there right now. That was just going to be scrap, so took that. This is a tube of Dykem High Spot Blue number 107 for surface scraping. So this is nasty stuff to stain your fingers, I guess. Tube. And it's probably, I don't know, more than half empty, but I figured, what the heck, might come in handy at some point for marking. It's not markup stuff, so it's not the stuff you brush on. It's a thicker paste stuff for, like when you're lapping a surface or scraping a surface and you want to check for high spots, you would put this stuff, I think, on like a straight edge, and you put the straight edge on it, wiggle it in, and then pull it up, and you'd see where the Dykem sticks as your high spot. So that's just a whole nother mystery to me. Anybody know what this is? If you got a Bridgeport, you would know. Okay, I guess you could use this on some drill presses. Might use the same size, but I actually already have a couple of these. So I've got one on my mill now, and I've got one in the drawer somewhere that'll probably be an eBay item, and this is gonna, I guess, join that. But this is a quick stop for your depth gauge. You put this on the rod of your mill there on the depth gauge. So there's the one I already have. Obviously the same manufacturer because it's identical, but that just clips on and off, locks onto the threads here on the rod, and gives you a depth stop. And if you don't want to use this one, I've just got it down here so it's out of the way, but you get the general gist of that thing. That's a nice little quick tool. So I don't know, these are cheap enough, and you can make your own. As a matter of fact, Tubalcane has a video, I think, on how to make your own one of these. This one is marked Norca, Norca. A 1/8" punch, which is badly bent, but I wasn't going to just leave this to go to the scrapyard because, yeah, it's badly bent, but the end's actually in pretty decent shape, and it's a Starrett, you know? So maybe I could straighten that back out. Boring bars. This one here's got some really tiny little, now you see, now that insert, okay, on this boring bar looks to me like that insert that I showed you guys a few episodes ago. And one of my regular contributors had chimed in and said he thought maybe that was an insert that was supposed to be mounted vertically in a cutter for threading, that it might be a threading insert. I'll have to take a look at those again at some point, but it was a small one like this, and it had that little relief cut in it there, almost like a chip breaker built into it. This one, I could see the corners broken off on this one, so the insert in there is no good, but I wanted the boring bar. And it's a cute little boring bar. Not that boring bars are cute. This is a Ceradex SI-STUNR 8-7. Okay. So something tells me this is a El Cheapo boring bar, maybe. Nothing to indicate where it was made. But that name sounds like an import to me. But hey, if I end up being able to use it for something, what do I care? This is another one. This is a Ceradex. This is a 10-2. All right, so that's more like maybe the size of the insert that I have a package of. Ceradex. C-E-R-A-D-E-X. Ceradex Saint or ST. I don't know. And this largest of the three looks like this might be, yeah, this might be more like the old school, like Kennametal or something. Or let's see what this is. All right, I don't know who makes this one, but it's marked B-5006 INS.TP32 11DL79. So I'm sure one of those numbers, if I Googled it, I could probably find out who makes this. But I think I've got some tips that'll fit this. So that might be a potential good score there. And I saved this from the trash pile. Not sure if it's a good one or not. I like to think that he was holding on to it because it was still good. So what this is a National Controls Corporation solid state timer, model CKK-120-461. So if I looked this up, I could find all the specs, but basically it says range 1.2 to 120 seconds. So the way this works, first off, it's an octal, this is what's called an octal base. There's actually a keyed, there's a little plastic key on there so that when you go to put these in, you got to rotate it around to find the spot where it goes in, like an old vacuum tube. Okay, it's 8 pins, so they call it octal. And this would have been in some sort of process or control equipment. And if you have octal relays, you could put this in the place of one of those octal relays depending on how it's wired. And what that will do is that'll give you a relay that will have a time delay built into it. And so what we've got is you got the pin out here and it shows you the wiring. You're going to put 120 volts AC into it at these 2 pins. That has to be there because that's what runs the circuit inside here to make it work the way it works. But then what it does is it gives you 2 pairs of contacts. So this is a double pole. Double pole, and actually you get another pair of contacts up here. So this is a double pole, double throw relay with built-in delay. So what you've got is you've got an on delay and an off delay. So you can decide how long this stays off before it turns on again, and then you can decide how long it stays on before it shuts off again. And that is variable up to 120 seconds, I believe it said. Yeah, 120 seconds, which is 2 minutes, okay? So if you wanted something to come on and run for 2 minutes and then shut off and run for shut off and sit there for 2 minutes and then run for 2 minutes, anytime 120 volts is on here, you could do that with this. So it's kind of a handy thing to do if you're building something and you have a need for it. But the other point is these are actually pretty expensive. I don't think there's much of a used market for them because the people who are buying these tend to be buying these to put into equipment in their company, and they're basically going to pick up the phone and buy a brand new one of these when they need one. They're not going to monkey around with a used one, more than likely. I would have to actually test this thoroughly before I decided to even list it on like an eBay, and I think even if I did all that, it would probably only bring maybe like 5, 10, 15 bucks. I don't think it would bring a lot of money. But I don't know. Call me crazy, but I didn't want to throw this out. I knew it was going to get thrown out. All right. We're getting near the end there, guys, but here's a nice little hand wheel. Okay? Cast iron. Well, I should say cast. Take 2. All right, here's a nice little hand wheel. It's a cast wheel, okay? This isn't broken off on it. The machine gray color on there indicates to me this came off of maybe a lathe or even a grinder or something. I think he said they had a surface grinder in the shop at some point. He thinks that may have been off of that. But if you're looking for a hand wheel like that and you go online and you find one on the bay, you're going to pay typically 25, 35 bucks for one. So why let that go to the scrapyard when I can maybe make somebody very happy who's got a machine with a broken handle on it. And so that's clearly off of a machine. Now that's the story on that one. This, this hand wheel I found laying on the floor under a pile of garbage. This is a horse of a different color. This thing's massive. I'm thinking, oh, handle on a jig borer or something, or would have to be a pretty large lathe if this was on the apron. But there's no crank on it, so I actually think this might be just off of a big gate valve. It's got a brass bushing in the center of it, and it's not keyed, and it also doesn't appear at first glance to be tapered. There is a casting number in the back here of 7-R-7. And then it says PM Company or PMCO. So, not quite sure what this goes to. Again, my guess is that it's on a big gate valve in some kind of an industrial application. But I just thought, oh, it's kind of a cool hand wheel. And I was looking at it and I was thinking, what this could be. The latest rage, of course, is repurposing vintage industrial items to do other things with it. Well, how about, why couldn't that make a heck of a nice base for a lamp? If you're into that kind of stuff, if you're into making vintage industrial, stuff to get people from Manhattan to overpay for. This might be just the ticket. I don't know. So... I don't know. It was going to go to the scrapyard. I threw it in the pile. So here's a nice V-block I scored. It would be great if when I clean this up, if it said, brown is sharp or Starrett or something on it. But I don't see any signs of any markings on it. So it might just be a shop-made one. But, it's just going to be scrap anyways. And it's a nice wide one. Figured, hey, just keep it on the drill press or whatever. It's got the recessed hole here for a cap screw to go down, so that this can be clamped right into a T-nut on the table of my mill. And it's got a bored and tapped threaded hole on this side, which is interesting. So I don't know whether or not this originally was a pair or not. But it's so wide that I could just use it as a solo V-block for, pieces, I think. So no harm there in grabbing that. So I like that freebie. Put it with my other V-blocks. Although that's kind of big. I don't know if I want that in the drawer of my toolbox. Plus it's got that rustification contamination. Found this box of cotter pins. Says cotter pins. Opened it up and, well, lo and behold, cotter pins. So, threw that in the pile. Probably enough cotter pins of that size there to last me my lifetime. Of course, the irony is, I bet you every time I go to use a cotter pin, these will not be the size I'm looking for. You never know. Put it in the pile.